The deal includes billions of dollars of increased market access for American exports, especially in agriculture.
This is a really fantastic, historic day in which we can announce this deal between our two great countries.
Keir, thank you very much.
Thanks, Donald, and we'll speak again soon.
Very good. So long. Bye.
No, you put the phone down. No, you put the phone down. The special relationship, Kamal, is alive and well in the Oval Office with that extraordinary press conference, the Donald in the hot seat, Keir Starmer phoning in from the UK because a trade deal between the US and the UK has finally been signed.
Well, Camilla, one of the more bizarre diplomatic and political moments we will have experienced. But yes, it does look like there have been some significant cuts in the tariffs that UK goods face getting into the US, particularly around cars, and for the US, better access to the UK, including agricultural products, which do include beef and have been controversial because of food standard issues.
Yes, we'll try and dissect whether that can be hormone injected or not.
Welcome to the Daily Tea with me, Kamal Ahmed.
And me, Camilla Tominey. So, Kamal, we're in the Daily Tea studio. We've just watched that press conference between...
Yep, it's now 4:15.
The President
He's
and
a little
the Prime
late.
Minister. He's a little late to the party, and now everything's been delayed on the Starmer side. But we're just going to cover what we know so far.
Let's just paint a picture first for
Yes.
everybody, because he was in the Oval Office. He was sitting at the presidential desk. To one side of him, his right, was J.D. Vance.
Yes.
To the other side of him was Peter Mandelson, the UK ambassador, New Labour guru.
It's like Britpop all over again, isn't it? Wow.
And Donald Trump then gives this very broad brush speech or announcement around trade where he says all of our beautiful products from America will be allowed to get into the UK. Not quite right, but he gives this broad brush approach. He talks about beef and ethanol. Not sure, let's get into the detail of ethanol. I'm not quite sure how much of that comes in. And then on the other side, he talks about the fact that they're very damaging for the UK car industry. We do £9 billion of trade in cars and car parts with the US every year. Donald Trump had already announced at the start of his presidency a 25% tax on those products from the UK, as well as many, many other countries. That appears to have now been cut to 10% for a quota of 100,000 cars. So not 10% for everything, but 10% until we hit that 100,000 car quota.
And for 12 months initially. So the same with opening up our markets to beef,
That's
US
right.
beef.
We haven't yet had a deal on the 10% blanket tariff, which, of course, as we've reminded all of you wonderful people, our audience, is the same as Afghanistan and the Taliban government. So that 10% blanket tariff remains. So overall, there will still be higher tariffs than before Donald Trump got to the White House. The US win appears to be this more access for agricultural products into the UK. And also, Donald Trump announced that there would be a $10 billion deal for Boeing planes being sold into the UK. One must assume that's going to be with British Airways or Virgin, one of the big carriers, EasyJet possibly. And reciprocal to that, Rolls-Royce engines, not the car maker, Rolls-Royce will be able to import aeroplane engines into the US tariff-free. Interesting, wasn't it, that Keir Starmer gave that really weird telephone conversation. He dialed in, not quite on Zoom, but on a chat dial, doing it from a car plant in the Midlands.
So let's first of all listen to the president, or as Keir kept on calling him, as we're all on first name terms right now, Donald.
No, Donald kept calling him Mr. Prime Minister.
Yes.
And Keir kept calling him Donald.
It sounded odd to hear Keir call him Donald so frequently, but let's just have a listen to how the US president spoke very lovingly, actually, about this special relationship.
But this is now turning out, I think, really to be a great deal for both countries, because it'll be really great for the UK also. So they're opening up the country. Their country is a little closed, and we appreciate that. They'll also be fast-tracking American goods through their customs process, so our exports go to a very, very quick form of approval, and there won't be any red tape. Things are going to move very quickly both ways. Once again, I want to thank Prime Minister Starmer. He's been terrific for his partnership in this matter, the special relationship and external bond. It's really an external and an internal bond between our two countries will soon be stronger than ever before. And we really do. We have a great relationship. I want to just say that the representatives of UK have been so professional, and it's been an honor doing business with all of them, and in particular the Prime Minister. And
then we had, as you say, Kamal, Keir Starmer's reply from a car plant somewhere. Was it in the Midlands, did you say?
I think it was in Solihull, yes.
Solihull.
Yeah.
This is a really fantastic, historic day in which we can announce this deal between our two great countries. And I think it's a real tribute to the history that we have of working so closely together. Can I pay tribute, Donald, to your negotiating team as well, particularly Howard and Jameson, who've done an incredible job, a very professional job, and my team as well. Two negotiating teams have worked at pace now for a number of weeks to bring in this deal today. Really important deal. This is going to boost trade between and across our countries. It's going to not only protect jobs but create jobs, opening market access. You may or may not know that it was about this time of day, exactly 80 years ago, that Winston Churchill announced victory in Europe, and that led to great celebrations across Europe, across America, but particularly in the United Kingdom. Literally people going out into the street, putting bunting up, going up to the palace. And so to be able to announce this great deal on the same day, 80 years forward, almost at the same hour, and as we were 80 years ago, with the UK and the US standing side by side, I think is incredibly important and makes this truly historic. And yes, we can finish ironing out some of the details, but there's a fantastic platform here, including, of course, on the tech side, where I think I'm right in saying we're the only two Western countries with trillion-dollar sectors when it comes to tech.
This is good politics for Keir Starmer, isn't it? I mean, this whole idea that nobody else could do this deal, and let's be honest, we know Theresa May tried. We know Boris Johnson was banging on about it. I mean, from a Brexiteer perspective, it's glad to see that we were in the end at the front of the queue. And I do get the significance of the day of days that it has happened on the 80th anniversary of VE Day. And we've just seen earlier today, haven't we, the royals and veterans and other VIPs gather at Westminster Abbey for those commemorations. But I don't know, I just was thinking, Starmer is quite lucky, isn't he, that this has now landed in his lap after India yesterday.
It will certainly look like good politics for about 24 hours, but UK farmers are going to be very concerned about increased access for US agricultural goods. Food standards campaigners will be looking at the detail. What you got here, Camilla, you're absolutely right. It's good politics, not quite clear what the economics are. And net, there are still more tariffs on British goods going into the US today than there were before the Donald Trump presidency began. The point you make, though, about not being at the back of the queue. Remember, it was Barack Obama, wasn't it?
And
who
David
said,
Cameron.
yes, you'll be at the back of the queue if you sign up to Brexit. And so that is a win. There's this, again, isn't it, Camilla? This odd mix. This is a win not only for a Labour government and a Labour Prime Minister who campaigned for a second referendum because he so hated the result of the Brexit referendum, but actually those who argue that we should not be doing deals with the EU, we've got to look elsewhere. So what are the two first big ones which will take us away from any possibility of doing a deal with the EU? India and the US, because the EU always demands that whatever free trade deals you do with it has to align with free trade deals that you do with other countries. So the more of these deals we pass, the less easy it is for Keir Starmer to do reciprocal deals with the EU.
And the Telegraph had written a piece earlier today about Rachel Reeves having to dial down the rhetoric on, oh no, the EU is more important than the US, obviously in light of what's happened. A couple of other observations from me. The last minute nature of the intervention that clearly the president made directly with the prime minister to get the deal over the line. Clearly they had teams working on all this, but actually when it comes down to the nuts and bolts of it all, it's the world leaders that take the credit. Kamal?
Let's hear. Peter Madison was in the room, our ambassador to the UK, of obviously an incredible architect of the old New Labour project many years ago, once our trade advisor in the European Union. Let's just hear him on that late night call, obviously between Donald Trump and Keir Starmer.
Mr. Ambassador, please. Well, Mr. President, thank you very much indeed in hosting us this morning. And thank you very much indeed also for that very typical 11th hour intervention by you with your phone call to the President, demanding even more out of this deal than any of us expected. So thank you for that. The Prime Minister was delighted, obviously, to take that call late at night. But you took it to another level. And I think the point I would make is twofold. One is that if we're going to rebalance and rebuild international trade in a way that serves all our interests, then we're better doing that together than separately and apart, and that's what we're on a mission to do.
Love the change of tune from Mandelson, who was once extremely critical of Donald Trump.
All politics, Camilla.
I know. And then also I thought that the rhetoric, particularly from the president, was quite Faragean, or maybe Farage is just imitating Trump and being Trumpian, but talking about the cutting of red tape, talking about the idea that we have lost our ability to build ships and to produce our own steel. Again, very Vancian, this notion of renationalisation. I thought was quite interesting and would appeal to those sorts of voters, just in the battle between Labour and Reform over some of the working class vote that we witnessed last week. Maybe this will be enticing to people who work in industries like shipbuilding and others. And also just that restating really of the ties between the two countries across the Atlantic. I mean, I think we had a lot of depressing talk kind of in the aftermath of the whole Blair and Bush love-in, that the special relationship didn't exist, it was dead. There was arguments that the Tories didn't do enough to kind of ingratiate themselves with Republicans. There was talk that Boris Johnson, for all of his bluster, wasn't quite making it work with Biden and what have you. And now we have a reinvigoration of a relationship that I think many people in Britain do think is important. They do like or loathe Trump. They do like the idea that he's an Anglophile and that he understands us and that there is that connection. They certainly didn't like it when his predecessor kept on insisting he was Irish and treating the British with a degree of contempt.
Joe Biden certainly didn't want a free trade deal with the UK. It'll be interesting to see the detail that Donald Trump announced that the UK was going to become part of the economic security alignment. I'm not absolutely clear what that is. The devil will be in the detail in a lot of these things. Remember John Bolton, the former national security advisor to Donald Trump, he said to us last week, this will be a piece of paper, a lot of very loud, seemingly very powerful words, but that's all it will be, a heads of terms agreement, the detail to be worked through. And Peter Mandelson made that point because trade deals, yes, of course they are political, but they are really about the nuts and bolts of the economics and the business relationship. So over the next 1, 2, 3 days, we'll start seeing really, has this really supported economic growth either in the UK or in the US? And certainly a lot of economists, JP Morgan, that's a bank whose chief executive, Jamie Dimon, that Donald Trump really listens to, that bank has already come out saying this is going to have a very marginal effect on trade between the two, because the overall effect of tariffs is to diminish trade, not to increase trade.
Also, we need to keep an eye out as to what concessions might have been made to the tech bros of Silicon Valley.
Yes, we heard nothing. So the dogs that didn't bark, we heard nothing about the digital services tax, which a lot of the big tech companies in America want to stop here in the UK. That's bringing in about £350 million of revenue a year into Rachel Reeves's Treasury, and she's going to want to hang on to that for dear life, because every piece of tax revenue she doesn't get in her coffers is even more risk to her ever hitting her own fiscal rules and creating more growth in the United Kingdom.
Now, we'll get on to domestic economic matters in just a moment. But before we do that, it was VE Day today, the 80th anniversary. Our colleague, the royal editor, Hannah Furness, was at Westminster Abbey for that historic ceremony, and she sent us this voice note.
Outside Westminster Abbey, where we've just marked their 80th anniversary of VE Day, there are crowds lining the streets. They're hoping to catch a glimpse of the King and Queen, of course, the Prince and Princess of Wales, but really I think they're hoping to see the proper stars of the show, which are the veterans. There are a few dozen here today, some in wheelchairs and with walking sticks. Most of them are around 100 years old, the ones who lived through V-Day and actually remember what happened. Some of them sat with their heads bowed during the service, some of them swayed along to some of the music, "We'll meet again" on the way out, and some nodded particularly emphatically at the words of some of the speakers who urged people to celebrate peace in Europe and make sure we kept it. There were hymns, the Prime Minister did a reading. There was about as rousing a rendition of "I Vow to Thee, My Country" as I've ever heard in the Abbey. As I speak, the royal family are still inside talking to the veterans. The King and the Prince of Wales both laid wreaths, and the women of the family have laid flowers outside the Abbey. The Princess of Wales looked every inch what might have been the forces' sweetheart back in the 1940s in a polka dot dress, and they'll have a lively time, I think, talking to the veterans and their families as they make their way out of the service. Later tonight we'll see some of them again at a big concert and Horse Guards parade. This is quite a solemn event. This is one of the final times that we're going to get to the veterans who helped bring peace and victory in Europe. By the time the 85th anniversary comes around in 5 years' time, of course those numbers will have dwindled. So the messages we heard today, loud and clear: never forget, never again, but most of all, thank you.
Very moving scenes today.